Welcome to Forensic Friday.
where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all. So, hi.
Hi.
I've missed you so much.
No.
We did the whole tour of Northern Colorado. We went up and saw all the nieces and nephews. So we saw my two nieces up in Berthoud, which was super fun, celebrated one of their birthdays. And she's at that fun age where Barbies are fun, but also fashion is cool. So
Oh, that's nice.
yeah, so we got her a skirt and a Barbie. It was great. That was a perfect day.
I love that.
Then we saw my brand new, freshly home from the hospital, boy and girl, niece and nephew, who just came home, and they're so cute.
They're Twinkies, right? Little twinnies.
Little twins. I know you're a twin. This is very special. Unlike your situation, they're both the same size. One didn't try to eat the other one in the womb.
Literally.
I know. You were a fifth of your brother's size or something, right? Or a third.
Half. I was half.
Oh my
'Cause
gosh.
It was 4 something, and I was 2 something.
Okay, these babies were 5 pounds, 7 ounces.
That's really good for twins.
They're so tiny though. So I was
I
thinking
know.
today how small you were. You were half of one of them.
Oh, yeah.
It's terrifying to think
I
about.
know.
Because even these little ones, I was I don't know if I want to hold you. You're so precious and fragile.
I know. Well, my dad used to say that I would fit. My whole body fit in his hand
Oh my gosh.
when I was first born.
That is just unbelievable.
I know. Well, as our hearers, as our listeners, as our hearers,
Our herd of listeners.
our, our herd, our herd of people.
Our herd.
I'm gonna keep with hearers.
Our herd.
I don't know why I think that's so funny.
Do an amazing start.
They'll find out during our Thanksgiving episodes what happened, obviously.
Yes.
For me, but it was funny when I was talking to my dad about when all that stuff happened. So sorry, y'all. I'm gonna say this, and you're not gonna have any idea of what I'm talking about, but you'll find out.
Yes. It's
But
coming.
I told my dad, I was like, I think that's literally the closest I've ever been to death, and he was like, "Well, you don't remember when you were born," and I was like, "You're right. I don't remember that. I feel like I just was in the NICU for a super long time, and then I was fine." And he was like, "Yeah, I was touch and go."
That was touch and go. You were 2 pounds. How long were you in the NICU?
6 months.
That's insane.
Yeah, half a year.
Oh my gosh, little
I
Matt.
know.
And did Mason go home? Did your brother just go home?
Oh, yeah, he was, on oxygen. He was fine.
He was he was fine. You are a fighter. Such a
Mhm.
little fighter. So Gary and I had a lot of time to listen to various podcasts. We, whatever. We like to listen to things when we drive together. And we didn't have Mac, so we could listen to grown-up stuff.
It's great.
So I finally listened to the post edit of Steve Nichols.
No.
Whole story, and I laughed my butt off because it's so funny.
I hate him so much.
Oh, I know, and it's apparent. It is dripping with contempt. We hate him. It's clear that we hate him. We don't usually feel that way all the way, and
No,
it's
yeah, we
all the
usually
way
can
bad.
find some empathy for,
No,
the perpetrator
no.
or alleged perpetrator.
Yeah, we're bye, dude. Take a long walk off a short pier.
Go back on that hike. Go
Go
look
back on the hike. I
for
mean, we are just not a fan of Steve.
No.
So Steve just needs to handle himself. But we were listening, and Gare said he has a theory about
What?
what happened.
Hold on, I gotta tell you, I think Steve should just check himself into prison. Anyway, keep going.
He really should. This is a self-select. I'm a
Like,
crazy person in a way that's not treatable. I'm just bad.
I'm just sad.
I'm
I
just bad.
I tried to kill my first wife,
Yeah,
allegedly. I allegedly, maybe, potentially killed my second,
allegedly.
allegedly. And then my last fiance,
Yeah,
either I say, if I'm him,
yeah.
I say that I left her, but really, let's think about what really happened.
Harm reduction for him would be like checking himself into prison so that he's not
Okay.
left to his own devices. But I don't think he'll do that.
No.
So Garrett was like, I have a theory. And I was like, you have a theory? Because Steve has like four theories about what happened, even though he was there. So here's here's Garrett's theory. I want to know what you think of it. Garrett said he thinks she was struggling from postpartum. She was super unhappy in her relationship. She
Oh, she talks about that.
miserable. So
Miserable.
he thinks that Steve maybe manipulated her and pushed her so hard emotionally that he almost talked her into suicide. That's what Garrett thinks might have happened.
But do you think that is impacted how she died? Like,
Yes,
oh,
potentially. Because if you think about how she landed, it is a little bit almost like she jumped.
mm-hmm.
So I still don't think she jumped. But Garrett was like, if she jumped, he thinks that Steve was doing some kind of psychological warfare potentially as well, like beating her down, making her feel bad.
Yeah.
Your daughter would be better off without you as a mother, like that kind of stuff. And
Mm.
people who are in a fragile state like that, which she may or may not have been, are susceptible to that. So that was Gare's additional theory in addition to Steve's four theories about how
Yeah,
things might have happened.
potentially.
Yeah. So there's that.
I could see that. I think he pushed her and she tried to stay on her feet.
I mean, that also makes sense. And 150 feet is a really long way to fall. Like you can move a little bit falling that far, which is horrible to think about, but you can.
I mean, think about it. Yeah, if he pushed her, or if she, yeah, I don't know.
Hmm.
You could land in a bunch of different ways. Well,
No, I know it's awful. It's awful.
terrible way to die.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh. Anyway,
Oh,
I know it sounds so
awful.
painful.
Well, on a lighter note, let's talk about
Mhm.
part two of the Menendez brothers. I don't think it's going to be any lighter.
It's not.
It's not any lighter.
I know. And we'll have to do another mini on them once everything happens.
Like an update with the court stuff.
Yes, part 2 today. We're stoked.
Bring it on. And I still have not looked at anything still.
Really?
Hmm.
Wow.
Discipline.
I'm impressed.
You do such a good job presenting stuff. I just want to be in the moment. I'm in the moment with you.
I love this journey for us.
I know.
Okay. So we left off part 1 with basically from the outside, the Menendez family looked like this perfect family,
Yes.
right? Like mom, dad, Kitty's kind of the fun personality. Dad is
Kitty.
I know
I
Kitty.
still can't with Kitty. I just don't.
It's
Whatever.
just a whole vibe to
It's
have
just
that
a
name.
weird thing to call yourself. That's what I think.
I don't know if she's self-selected or if people just started calling her that.
She could have picked something else.
You're not wrong.
I
You're not
don't
wrong.
I don't care if your name is Kitty McGee. You don't have to go by Kitty. Come up with something else.
Kitty McGee.
Name yourself Kay.
So funny. So Jose was, this perfect businessman, very charismatic. Kitty was a caring mother, kept the family together.
Totally.
Lyle was at an Ivy League school, and Erik was this star tennis player, right? So that's
Mm,
kind of where he landed. Perfect picture for a first generation American story.
okay.
Okay. So at this point in the case where we left off is the therapist slash psychologist took the stand.
Oh, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
they had that real enmeshed relationship where
Mm-hmm.
dad was paying for therapy so he could get all the information
When they boys were younger, yep.
when the boys were younger and, didn't have boundaries around all of that. So when he took the stand, he knows so much stuff.
Well, but it's more like the biggest issue that Lyle had was that Lyle knew this guy was a phony, distrustworthy psychologist.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you and I've talked about quite literally, even with court ordered treatment, we protect clients' information the best that we can. And then also, I know of stories of therapists who have gone to jail over their records. Like,
Yeah.
they will fight a court order about the records. So a good therapist wants to protect your information and is very clear with you about what they're going to share. So this like backdoor info thing is so bogus. It's
Yeah.
not even funny.
No. So Lyle knew all that when Erik, because remember, Erik went to his office and told him the whole thing.
Yep.
Remember?
Yep.
Oh,
And he was suicidal.
and he was suicidal. He was about to lose his mind. And he, to him, he's like, this is, he didn't have any other experience with a therapist, so this is all he knew.
Right.
And Lyle was pissed because Lyle was like, this dude's a fraud and an a-hole.
Totally.
So he said, oh, wait, okay, hold on, sorry. I literally wrote in here, he's so punchable.
He's so punchable.
Yes. The psychologist.
What's his name again? Dr. whatever.
Jerome Oziel.
Dr. Jerome, so punchable.
I know.
Oh my
Anyway,
gosh.
the whole thing. And remember, he also had this like affair
With a client.
with a client
And then the client got pissed and
and ratted him out.
yep. Yep. Don't sleep with your client.
That's like the biggest thing
Job one. The
in grad
only,
school,
I
they
mean,
say.
therapy is this weird, like, ooey gooey. There's so many different ways to do therapy. There's like one major rule, and the major rule is don't sleep with your clients.
Literally.
That's the rule.
Just don't do it.
Just don't do it.
You know?
Ugh. You hate to see it.
I know. I thought I'd go my whole career without knowing someone who did that. Unfortunately, that's not true.
Nope. Well, we know the human who did that, but yes,
I know.
it's a thing that
Ooh.
people do sometimes.
Yep. So this is what Dr. Oziel, I can't even say his first name. Yeah, anyway, he's a whole
We
thing.
should just call him Jerome. I'm not giving him the doctor title because he did not earn it.
Well, let's just call him Oziel.
Oziel. Oziel.
But we'll leave the doctor out because he's a whole jackwagon.
Yeah,
Okay.
100%.
Mr. Oziel. So he said when Erik came in, he was very agitated, depressed, and had lost quite a bit of weight, right? And we had kind of gone over that before.
Yeah.
And he also had suicidal ideation, which we also mentioned. So Erik had asked to go on a walk with Dr. Oziel and said how, like, was raving and ranting about how great his dad was.
Which is weird.
Yes and no, which we'll
How
get more
great he
into.
was, like kind of the sainthood thing after somebody
Mhm.
dies.
Yeah, that, and I think the fact that their dad is kind of a legend, not in the best way,
Mm,
but he was such a business guy. He like had made himself into something out of nothing.
yeah.
So he was ranting and raving about how great his dad was. When they got back to the building, that's when Erik shared about what happened, that him and Lyle had killed their parents.
Okay.
Okay, so I know we already went over this, but this is what Dr. Oziel is sharing on the stand.
Okay.
Erik also told him that his father was over controlling, impossible to please, and that he had been very controlling and damaging to their mother,
Okay.
and that she was super miserable.
Kitty. Kitty was miserable.
Kitty was miserable.
Okay.
So Dr. Oziel also asked, like, basically, well, why did you kill your mom if
Hmm.
she wasn't really the one who felt overbearing or whatever?
Yeah.
And he said that she was included in the plan because she would have been a witness, and they felt like the mother could not bear the pain of all this. And they basically like euthanized her, like put her out of her misery.
But didn't they shoot her like multiple times?
They shot both of them multiple times.
Okay. But their story is it was almost a mercy killing because she couldn't be a witness, but also wouldn't have to go through the pain of
Her son
losing her
killing.
husband, her son's killing her husband.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Oziel wanted to get all their confession on tape, like we had talked about, because he was like quote unquote scared for his own life.
Right.
And it was basically blackmail. Like I said before, when Lyle went into the office, he was, and this is what Dr. Oziel said, he was threatening and menacing, in quotes.
Right.
Lyle said that he was really upset with Erik as Lyle knew that they could not trust this therapist.
Mm.
He told them he recorded as he felt like it was a threat to his own life. That's in quotes.
Mm.
Oziel told his wife and his girlfriend what happened. So both his wife and his girlfriend knew about all this stuff.
He needed that much support. I need to call in my wife and my girlfriend about this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Poor guy. Very stressful.
I know. His girlfriend was named Judson Smith,
Hmm.
again, a client of his, and she also expressed that he had drugged her, raped her, threatened her life to keep her quote unquote quiet.
Okay.
The thing is, so when there's a point where she took the stand, and it didn't show a ton of this in like the actual documentary, but it was a total dumpster fire, her taking the stand. Like it just made everyone it made her look insane, which
Right.
added like it kind of discredited
Mm.
Dr. Oziel. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Mm-hmm.
He obviously lost his license after all of this.
Thank goodness.
I know. And the thing was they also didn't get the tapes until the very end of the trial.
Hmm. That's
But
interesting.
it was the fact that they had them. So that was kind of when they had to switch their plea from not guilty to guilty. This was part of why.
Well, because there was an admission.
Literally,
Yeah.
it was recorded.
Well, and there's been so much, we'll probably get into this more at the end, but there's been so much legally that's happened because after the theater shooting, that psychologist was
Mhm.
subpoenaed, and, we'll get into that someday, but
Mhm.
there's actually been a lot of legislation around this because,
Yeah.
like you said last time, we're not required to report a
Mm.
past incident unless it affects a child and there's
Yep.
potential for that to happen in the future, right? But I
Mhm.
mean, a lot of the stuff that's happened in the past is kind of safe,
Yeah.
whether it's theft or whatever, all the way up to murder. I
Yeah.
mean, it's supposed to be kept confidential. So in this case, it got exposed because they got tied up with subpoenas and all that kind of stuff. But technically, your
Exactly.
therapist can be subpoenaed. So
Yeah.
is it really confidential? This is a big talking point in our line of work.
Yep. Well, and that's the thing. So like that was the whole thing with this dude was he recorded. They were not comfortable with him recording, but he basically said you have no choice.
Mm.
And these boys like they're not well versed in the
Oh,
therapy world, you know.
no.
And so he records these things. Girlfriend knows that there's recordings and that's what she ratted on,
Mm.
right? So
So he
then
coerced them into the recordings.
yeah, oh, absolutely.
Mm.
He tells them, "Well, this is for safety for my own life because if you kill me, then the police will get access to these tapes."
Was the threat, did he threaten them? I won't be your therapist unless I record our sessions.
No. It was more like Eric had already confessed.
Mm-hmm.
It was not on recording. I do not believe his first confession,
Okay.
but because he had confessed, I think he used that to his advantage and basically was like, "You both can come see me, but if you do," it was coercion. He said, "I'll keep this secret. It'll stay between the three of us, but for basically like, liability of his own life, he recorded it and told them that." He said,
Okay. So he reassured them that he would not share it,
"Yes.
but they needed to record.
Yes.
Okay. That's wild.
I know." And you and I know of therapists who've worked with people who have done some pretty gnarly things.
Absolutely.
I mean, you and I have also worked with people like that, but I know of a therapist who worked with someone who did some pretty bad stuff, and you can't tell anyone.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've had people admit to me that they've killed people in prison and stuff like that. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
that's not something that we disclose. And I know that probably sounds really terrible because you have a victim's family and all that kind of stuff, but I
That's
mean,
the line of work we sign up for, though.
exactly. Like this is what we do, you
Yeah.
know?
The only time we have to report is if we're worried about them doing it to someone else.
Right. We have a duty to warn in that
Yeah.
case.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm embarrassed
Mhm.
about the psychologist. I just feel like
Mhm.
there's a lot of bad apple therapists. There's a lot of wonderful therapists, but when you have a bad one, I think it highlights the amount of power that a
Mhm.
therapist can have in somebody's life. It's a big deal. It's really sacred. So I'm
Mhm.
frustrated by that. It makes me angry,
Yep.
especially knowing that the boys had been hurt and
Yeah.
that they did something horrific. Like
Yeah.
all of that, and then you have this jackass in the middle of it all, and it's just disappointing and frustrating.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Because he made it so much worse. All of it made it all worse.
Oh yeah. So while they were in jail, Lyle wrote a letter to Erik that was 17 pages long.
Oh my gosh.
At the end, Lyle wrote, "Destroy this after reading." He wrote the letter because he could not say what happened out loud. Okay, so this is when we start to get into more of the juice.
Hmm.
He said in the letter that telling sick secrets of the family would be like killing their parents again, and he did not want to do it.
Oh.
This is when a lot of those secrets start to come out.
Mm.
So Erik was supposed to destroy the letter, but Erik loved the letter. Why do you think he loved the letter?
Mm.
Remember, Lyle's really like kind of the tough brother.
Well, Lyle's pissed.
Well, Lyle's pissed, but Lyle's a little bit more like dad. Remember when I said that?
Uh-huh.
Wired a little more like dad. Erik's wired a little more emotional like mom.
Yeah.
Why do you think Erik loved this letter that his brother wrote him?
Probably because it contains some emotion.
Exactly.
Yeah, it probably felt like connection to
Yep.
him. Yeah.
That's exactly what he says. Like it was vulnerable, it was connecting, it was
Mm-hmm.
him being honest with how
Yeah.
what he feels about everything.
Yeah.
So, Erik loved this letter, so he didn't destroy it.
Oh no.
He said he literally, quote, "It was a precious letter to me."
Oh.
He was expressing his own pain, and that didn't happen often.
Mm.
I know.
So Lyle finally opens up, kind of, and
hmm
Erik just keeps it.
hmm So,
Oh.
as a result of this letter being found, they had to confess to everyone and relive their parents' death, really admitting to what they did and share the pain from their past.
Mm.
Leslie, the attorney, the little, BA attorney,
Mm-hmm.
now had an idea that the boys were keeping really terrible secrets.
Mm.
So Leslie hired another psychologist.
Mm.
This went over like a lead balloon at first.
Yeah.
The psychologist obviously had a hard time getting Erik to open up. So Leslie worked with Erik, right? They each
Yeah.
had to have their own defense attorneys.
Right.
So the psychologist obviously had a hard time getting Erik to open up because Erik's like, screw anybody who has that type of
Oh.
license.
Oh yeah. He's like, I've seen this show before.
Yeah, like you're going to use this against me.
Absolutely.
The psychologist knew there had to be more to this case with how the murders happened, which you and I both know. Like, you don't murder anybody
Mm-mm.
in that fashion if it's
Mm-mm.
not real personal and lots of pain.
Up close personal overkill. So
Yes.
tons of emotion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's OJ Simpson level overkill
Yeah.
emotion.
Yeah.
You know? Absolutely.
Allegedly. Allegedly.
Allegedly.
So when this psychologist first met with Erik, he immediately noticed how depressed and distraught he was.
Mm,
Like that was the first thing. He was like, this guy is a shell.
mm.
Lyle said it would have been better losing the murder trial than to share what happened to them.
Wow. So they'd rather go to prison and be convicted murderers than talk about what actually happened to them growing up.
That's how Lyle felt. hmm
Oh.
So when the psychologist interviewed Erik,
Mm.
right? I keep going back and forth, so stay with me.
Did Lyle tell the psychologist that at that
He
time, or that's just what he was thinking?
he said that in an interview, but that's what he
Okay.
was thinking.
That's what he
Mhm.
was thinking. Okay, but he didn't tell the psychologist that.
No, because the psychologist only, well, first, I think really only met with Erik.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. When the psychologist interviewed him the first time, Erik could not stop talking about how wonderful his dad was. So,
Oh,
same pattern. He kept crying and talking about how wonderful his dad was, and the psychologist literally was like, I could not control him. Like, I couldn't tell him, I couldn't get him to stop. I couldn't say, well, yeah, but you killed him. So, like, if he's so great, why'd you kill him? Like, psychologist was like, I couldn't get in there.
so he was just broken record,
Hmm.
fire hose of my dad was so great. My dad was so great. My dad was so great.
Yep. Crying, just
Mm.
hysterical.
Which is a total tell to the therapist that thou doth protest too much, right? Like if you are trying to sell your
Hmm.
psychologist so hard on this narrative, they're going to know something's up.
Well, that, and it's in my brain, it's a trauma response.
Oh, it's a total trauma response, and it's you just know there's something there. It's
Yes.
funny when we co-facilitate a session, which we do quite a bit of that, or a group.
Yep.
Sometimes something will happen and nobody's picking up on it in the room except us as therapists, and we'll look at each other and we're thinking the same thing,
Yep.
you know? And so
Yep.
I'm sure that psychologist was like, well, this is interesting.
Yes. Yeah. And my brain honestly goes to they had to protect, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
18 years of protecting their dad.
Mm-hmm.
18 years of that,
Oh man, yeah.
you
You're
know?
right.
So I'm sitting there, I'm like, it's a trauma response.
Yeah.
It's just, it has to be. And you and I both know also, which I'm sorry, like, spoiler alert, with the type of abuse that they
Mm-hmm.
allegedly endured, there's a lot of confusion with how you feel.
That's true. That's true too.
No. Okay. So putting the psychologist on pause for a second.
Okay.
So one of their cousins came forward. So here's where we're kind of starting to collect some data
Okay.
of their story. Okay.
From family members.
From family members, yes. So again, the boys are still really kind of locked up with their experience. So one of the cousins comes forward. She tells the story about when Jose put Lyle on the kitchen counter and oh, this makes me so freaking mad. Okay. Puts Lyle, the oldest brother, when he's little, on the kitchen counter, and prompts him to jump off and that Jose was going to catch him.
Oh no.
Your face says it all.
Oh no.
We know, a kiddo's going to jump off the freaking counter. Jose backs off and lets him fall to the ground and said, you cannot trust anyone.
Okay, so I think it's bad when parents like throw their kids in the pool and they're like, figure it out, because we've counseled that trauma a million times, right?
Yeah.
This is like that times 1 million
Oh, horrible.
because it's this
He could have broken
horrible.
his like legs. He could have
Well, and
cracked
there's
his
an
skull open.
emotional lesson in there. Like, be a psychopath. Don't trust anybody. Don't feel
Yes.
anything. You can't count on even me. I'm your
Yep.
dad. I'm not going to catch you.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yep.
That's just the first one you're going to share with me?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Like, oh,
I mean, that one sticks out. Like, that one's a big one besides some of the other types of abuse. But when it comes to just like quote unquote lessons learned by freaking Jose Menendez, that's one of them.
that's horrible.
Oh, terrible. I can't imagine. Honestly, Janine, and this is a tangent. When
Mm,
I hear
mm,
child abuse stories, those like they make me
mhm.
so angry. Like I
Yeah.
like shake when I hear certain stories, any
Yes.
stories on kids. And I'm like, how in the actual F?
Mm.
Like, where do you, anyway, that's a whole thing. I had a conversation with someone a while back. Sorry, I'm now on a tangent.
Oh, yeah, you're good.
I had a conversation with someone a while back, and we are talking about kids and parenting and all this stuff. And, um, IVF, like it was a weird conversation, but
Yeah.
um kind of random, but IVF, and they're like, "Well, don't you like they kind of come from this old school background and they're like, "Well, don't you feel like if you have to do IVF, maybe you're not meant to be a parent?" And I was like, "Dude, there are like people." And
Oh,
they were genuinely asking like
yeah.
out of a curious place because they were like
Yeah.
wrestling with something themselves, right? So
Yeah.
like this is kind of how I've always thought, but I don't think that's how I think now, and I'm just curious. So we had a really good conversation. So
Yeah. Yeah.
no shame on this human.
Yeah.
But we were talking and I was like, dude, there are people out there who can have plenty of freaking kids who should never be around them
Yeah. This
ever
guy's
in
one of
their
them.
life.
Yeah.
And then there are phenomenal humans out
Mm.
there who cannot have kids biologically or naturally, and so they need a little help or they need to adopt. And I'm all for that because trust me, like,
Mm.
anyway, that's a whole
And
tangent.
they're sometimes 10 times the parent of somebody else, and they will fight like
Absolutely.
hell to have a family and to have children. And then you
Yes,
got this jackwagon over here who probably got her pregnant by looking at her, and
literally.
the terrible, shitty person and an even worse parent. And
Yeah.
so that is one of
Mm.
life's really cruel
Hmm.
things
It
that
makes
happen.
me so angry. That'll be something that I take to Jesus one day,
You're gonna
and I'll
have
be
to.
like, but why?
So when I was in grad school, they had this thing for a while that was so dumb, but they ask what population you want to work with and what population you
Mm,
don't want to work with. And
mm,
I didn't want to work with kids,
I
not
couldn't.
because I don't like kids, but because I will get mad.
Same,
Okay.
same.
And I prefer to work with the parents, whip them into shape, and things get better for the kid. I like that way better.
That's literally probably why you and I are so similar.
Yes, and we like that work, the prevention of that work.
I would rather get to the root of the issue.
Yes, which is environment, parents, etc. I know.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna just say the thing that's parents.
Yeah.
It is. They are the root of most of the time the root of the issue.
Oh, 100%. But they bring their kids, and it's good to bring your kids to therapy,
Yeah.
especially if they've had trauma, but they bring the kids in like fix the kids. And we sometimes see parents, they're in the waiting room, they're on their cell phones, whatever, and some of those parents are so involved and they're doing everything to help their kid.
Yes.
Some of
Yes.
them are dropping their kid off to get fixed and then come home.
Yep.
And that's really hard for me. They made me work with kids. And
Mm,
wouldn't you know it, I had two of the most complex cases
mm.
they've ever had in that counseling center. And it was really hard stuff with kids. And so at the end, they're like, now you want to work with kids, huh? I was like, nope, absolutely not. I said,
You're like,
I
you just
feel,
chased me away from it.
I feel more strongly now. Thank you for your paradoxical
Mhm.
non-intervention. I'm never doing it. I'm not going to work with kids, and I haven't since.
You know what's really interesting?
Teens, yes. Kids, no.
I love teens.
Oh, yeah.
I worked with, you know how they say, I mean, you and I had the same practicum.
Mm,
They like try to do their best to screen, and I think they do attempt to do their best to
they
screen,
try. They
you know,
try.
for like baby brand new therapists.
Yes.
I had a victim to a DV situation
Yep.
literally in the moment, and I'm like, I'm not trained for this
No.
at all.
I'm still nervous reading my disclosure statement. Like, what? I'm supposed to do what with this?
I know.
Oh, yeah, no.
It was a whole thing. Like the client was like, "Can we meet in my car? Because my dogs are in here, and I'm on like I had to run out of my home." And I'm like, "No,
What is happening?
I don't think I can do any of that, and I don't know what to do with my life in this moment." Anyway, so
Oh,
even working with that, I was like, and it's not that I don't ever want to work with individuals who've been
mm-mm.
victimized by DV, but I'd rather get to the source of the issue.
Well, and when I worked with kids, I had a supervisor rake me over the coals
Mm,
because this kid was in this horrible position. You know me, I'm going to go in on that, right? Like, I'm not going to sit around and be like, let's just talk about your stuffed animal. Like, no, I'm going to go in, right? This is my
right.
whole counseling style. Like, love it or hate it. You don't have to work with me, right? So I'm sitting on this beanbag chair and we're like talking and whatever. And when she went to leave, she said it's the most safe she had ever felt in her whole life was
Oh,
hanging out with me. And so she gives me this little side hug and I put my arm around her too. And I gave her a little hug, a little side hug. My
cute.
supervisor was like, we don't do that. I was like, excuse me? I said, we don't what now? We don't give a side hug to a 6-year-old who's in a really bad spot because it
Sorry.
would have really hurt her for me to not.
Fire me.
Fire me. Fire me. Pound sand, bro. I'll find
Bye.
another way, right?
Bye bye.
But it was just this very weird, arbitrary rule.
Mm,
But it just burned into my consciousness. I just cannot
mhm,
work with somebody who's powerless in their environment.
mhm.
It's horrible.
I know I can't either. It's too
No,
hard.
but we know wonderful play therapists, so
We
that
do. We
works
have
for
great
us.
referrals for
And they
kids
would not want to do our job either.
ever, ever.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Okay, back in.
Okay, that's just fucking terrible, but yes, carry on.
Your mom's gonna be so mad at
I
you.
know, I'm so sorry, Mom. Bye, sorry, Tina.
I am doing better. I'm working on it.
Tina would agree that that's fucking terrible, though. It's not just terrible, it's extra terrible. Terrible
It's
doesn't cover it.
horrible.
Awful doesn't cover it. Horrible doesn't cover it. It's
No,
fucking terrible.
it is, dude, Jose's a whole thing.
I'm
So
sorry.
Lyle jumps off the counter, lands, dad's like, you can't trust anyone.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Other families saw Jose hit Lyle with a closed fist
Mm.
when Lyle was about 5 or 6 years old.
Oh my gosh.
There were no character, surprise, surprise. There were no character witnesses for his parents during this trial.
And God knows they tried. They called all of Kitty's friends. They called the people at the
The
stores where they would
only
shop.
the only person who had anything nice to say was Jose's secretary.
Oh, because he was probably banging her too and paying her more to
Well,
do
I was just gonna say, and I'll remind you, he was having an affair. That chick still had nothing good to say,
it. Mhm.
because he dumped her to get back, to make it right with his wife. He's a whole thing.
Oh, no, no. And Kitty too. Kitty's not so great, turns out.
Oh no, kid. Oh, I can't with any of them. I can't with any of them.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
If you and I, here's the thing. I think both Lyle and Erik would probably be some of our favorite clients ever to work with.
Well, you're
Ever.
gonna have to sell me because I'm straddling the line
Ugh,
of empathy for them and also horror at the way that they killed their parents. So you haven't tipped me
yes.
fully over, but I'm waiting. I'm listening.
Okay.
I'm
Oh my
reserving
God.
judgment.
Okay. So obviously there was a little bit of a hard dynamic with Lyle. I'm sorry, dynamic of Lyle respecting his father as he was a powerful man, but also he was super scared of him, obviously.
It's the biggest euphemism of all time.
I
It was a
know.
little difficult. It was a what
I
did
know.
you
Sorry.
say? It was
No,
uh
I don't even know what I said.
I don't know, but it was a great euphemism. It was like it was
Okay.
a little tricky, something
A
like
little, the dynamic's a little hard.
a little hard. Just complicated. It's complicated.
Complicated.
It's terrible.
It is terrible. Okay. So it's a really terrible dynamic because Lyle both respects his dad because he's a powerful man and he's like scared crapless of him.
Which I think is actually pretty common in powerful families with
Yes.
abuse.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
So, Lyle, as I've mentioned a little bit, Lyle ended up being more like his dad.
Mm.
And I do think some of that is because he's also older. He's the older
Hmm.
brother.
Yeah.
So Lyle ended up at more like his dad as time went on, and Erik ended up more like Kitty, more emotional, and would get more
Mhm.
hysterical at times.
Yeah.
There was another story when Jose would have Erik hold onto a bar, so the younger brother Erik hold onto
Like a pull-up bar? Like a
basically, yeah.
okay.
And Erik and Jose would lift the bar with Erik on it. Okay.
Oh no.
He would hold him up and see how much he could stand without crying. So Jose would hold the bar up in the air and basically say, like, hold him there until Erik cried. Erik would start crying, and Jose would yell at him to stop crying.
Okay. Okay, I have a couple of thoughts. Number
Your
one,
face.
Dominique Moceanu, you know that adorable little gymnast that everyone loved, who's my age at least.
Okay.
1996 gold medalist,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
amazing. Trained with the Carolis though, the crazy
Yeah.
Carolis.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So when she was little, and Romania is a whole vibe, right? So
Yeah.
they would have her hold on to this bar as long as she could. They would catch her, but they would hold on to this bar for a really long time and like watch her. And I remember being like, well, I would get really good at that too. Like if you put my little self on a bar and you were just like, hey, honey, hold on as long as you can, and then like cross your arms and watch,
Yeah.
you're gonna hold on for a long time because it's
Yes.
scary.
Yes.
So I'm thinking of that in the context of this
Hmm.
with the emotional abuse on top of it.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, no wonder he had such a hard relationship with himself.
This is the tip of the iceberg.
Oh no.
Hmm.
You're right.
This,
I'm gonna have empathy for them. I'm gonna understand at the end of the day.
you don't shoot your parents with shotguns
Mm-mm.
because of that.
No, although it didn't help.
It
That
didn't
one's
help.
for the bar. Like,
Literally.
jeez.
So he'd hold Eric up. And what's weird, not weird, but Lyle was Jose's favorite child.
Mm,
Lyle was tougher than Eric and loved when Lyle would get competitive with like their cousins and
mm,
yeah, just like basically tell them and tell him that he needed to be the tough one.
mm.
Jose favored Lyle, but believed both boys needed to quote unquote earn love.
Yeah.
Hmm. He's a real peach.
Mm-hmm.
And his genuine belief was you had to go through pain to be loved.
Mm.
What do you think about Jose so far? Just like a quick thought.
I think it would not surprise me if he's psychopathic. I don't have enough information to make a determination, but that would not surprise me.
Yeah.
I think he's really twisty, and I also have theories about what he was raised with
Hmm.
too, because there's a little bit of that macho, this is how we develop strong men kind of thing. I
Hmm.
shudder to think what he would have done to a daughter. He probably would have ignored a daughter, to be honest,
Yeah.
probably full ignore,
I don't think he would have. Yeah, I don't know if he would have really
you
abused.
know? But I think with this kind of model of I'm going to train the emotion out of my sons.
Hmm.
I'm going to just get rid of it. My guess is he probably went through a similar process.
Yeah.
I don't have a ton of empathy for that because a lot of people have a lot of abuse growing up and don't grow up and do the same things to their kids.
Right.
But that's my working theory at the moment.
Yeah. Or the abuse looks different.
Right.
It's maybe not. Yeah, it might show up different.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So then one of the cousins also took the stand and said when they were children, Lyle told her what was happening.
Mm,
She went and got Kitty and told Kitty what Lyle said. And we'll get to that, what Lyle said in a minute.
mm,
Kitty didn't believe her. Kitty then went and took Lyle by the arm, brought him upstairs, and nothing happened after that. Nothing, there was nothing that was followed up.
mm,
And basically what this cousin was told and shown. So Lyle like showed her like he was like touching himself inappropriately
mm,
and said like basically something like, "Does your dad do this stuff to you?" And she's
mm.
like, "What?"
Like,
And
say
went,
what? No.
yeah, and went and told Kitty, and Kitty was like basically grabbed Lyle, brought him upstairs, and then nothing ever happened after that. Like
So,
not I should say nothing happened. Nothing was done.
so did she bring him upstairs to shut him up so he stopped talking about it? Yeah.
Mhm.
But then didn't do anything about the abuse.
There was no follow-up. Like the
Oh
cousin was
my
like, I
God.
didn't like nothing happened. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. So that psychologist, we're going back to the new psychologist. Okay.
Yes.
His name is Dr. Vicari
Okay.
and there's two, I guess, Dr. Burgess.
And this is the one during the trial
Correct.
who worked with Eric.
Yes.
Okay.
Oziel's gone.
Oziel, yeah, he's been run out of town. He is no
Bye bye.
longer a psychologist. He's
No.
just a shitty person, but he's
Correct.
no longer a psychologist.
Correct.
Good.
So they gained Erik's trust, and Erik began to tell them what was going on.
Hmm.
I know I'm being really vague with a lot of this stuff. We're going to get into some specifics. I can't name some of it because I think we would get flagged. Um,
Probably.
yeah. So Lyle takes the stand first.
Hmm.
There were a lot of questions to why Lyle wanted to make his father happy. Then it came out at the age of 6, Lyle began getting sexually abused by his father.
Oh.
And we're at the oldest brother. So at this point, Lyle's 6, Erik's 4.
Hmm.
He said he would have to have these talks and he would show me and would fondle me and would have me touch him.
Hmm.
Mhm. When asked, would he do other things, he said yes. He was also raped by his father.
Hmm.
He said he told his mother that he keeps touching me. She told him to stop it and that he was exaggerating.
So told him to stop what was happening or to just stop talking about it. Like it's not happening, stop talking about it.
So Lyle told mom.
Right?
Mom basically tells Lyle to shut up
Yeah. Just
and says
stop
that
it. Stop talking about it.
and says that he's exaggerating. Let me reframe that really fast. So Kitty would say, basically, shut up, you're exaggerating, and that he had to punish me when I did things wrong, and that he loved me.
So that is just a total mind F.
Good,
Because,
good
right?
filter.
I do good. You're
We're
welcome.
gonna,
Tina.
I mean, it gets real dicey, so we should probably attempt to filter as best as we can some of it.
The reason that I think that is so messed up is it's like ultimate gaslighting.
Yep,
Nothing's happening, shut up.
yep,
Also, if it is happening, it's because he loves you and also has to discipline you.
yep.
Oh my gosh. How to get your kid to murder you 101.
He was then asked during these years, 6 to 8, if he had done these things with his brother,
Hmm.
and he said yes.
Which makes sense,
Yep,
unfortunately.
yep, and that he would take his brother to the woods and would play with him the same way. Quote, in quotes, play.
So it's a trauma reenactment. He's going to
Yep,
reenact the things that he's experienced.
yep. The video of him confessing this in the documentary is so painful to watch.
Hmm.
And I said this before in the part 1. There's obviously the documentary. There's 2 documentaries. There's one on Peacock, one on Netflix, and then there's this show.
Right, right, right.
The show is very dramatized, but I will tell you the abuse parts are not dramatized.
Okay.
So if you watch the documentary, it shows Lyle on the stand talking about this. It's
So
horrible.
so they talked about this at the trial. It's not like this is just coming out.
Yes, no, this was Janine.
Oh, I see why I'm going to get mad. It's
You're
coming
gonna get
together.
so angry.
Oh my God.
Yes, yes. Okay. This is why I'm so passionate about this freaking
I get
case.
it.
I can't.
I'm getting it.
Ugh, it makes me so angry. And here's
Mm.
the thing, people are gonna disagree. They're gonna be like, those boys are full of it. Whatever. I'll get to my thoughts on that in a minute.
I believe you will.
I'm like, whatever.
Mhm.
Like I said, the video of him confessing this on the documentary is super painful to watch. Erik cannot keep it together. So Erik's watching his brother
Mm.
share these experiences, share what he did to him. Lyle was in tears. It was a whole thing. You can't like make that up.
Mm-mm.
You
No.
cannot make that
And
up.
first of all, victims don't make things up very often anyway.
Mm-mm,
Um, but at that time, too,
mm-mm.
having sexual abuse, especially from a father to their son, this is just not things that we talk about. And there's an awful lot of shame involved in all of this. So there was this, what he didn't do this to win anything.
No. And here's the thing. This was the first time that Lyle had admitted and apologized to Erik ever. for
Was
this.
in court. Oh my gosh. No wonder Erik was a mess.
Horrible. Horrible. Erik then took the stand. Guess what age Erik got started getting molested at?
6.
6.
Yeah.
6 years old. He continued to get abused for 12 years.
By father and Lyle.
Just by father. Lyle did it when they were younger, and then the abuse stopped
Okay.
for Lyle
Okay. But dad kept doing it.
to Erik.
Mm.
So, and I might get to this later, so if I do, it'll just maybe be a reminder. So I believe, so Lyle was abused, I believe, from 6 to 8.
Okay.
And then I think Lyle said something along the lines of, "You're hurting me. This hurts me." And dad was like, "I don't want to hurt you." So he stopped abusing Lyle and started abusing Erik.
And then he abused Erik longer
For 12 years till Erik was 18,
because he didn't
I think.
like Erik. He didn't have the same attachment to Erik.
Mhm.
Because Erik told him it hurts too. He probably just didn't care the same way.
Mhm.
Oh,
This is also so in the show, the show portrays Erik as like very gay.
hmm,
Let me remind everybody, Erik is married to a woman. He got married in prison to a woman who was writing him. Okay.
hmm.
I do believe that Erik was probably wildly confused about his sexuality because his dad abused him into his adulthood.
Well, sexuality is complicated anyway.
It's
Okay.
very complicated.
And when you throw trauma in there at such a young age,
Sexual trauma.
yeah, you just end up with kind of an interesting relationship with yourself and with
Yes.
your sexuality.
Yep.
So I can imagine that's a struggle for him. It would be for almost anybody.
Anyone. You're
Not a struggle that he may or may not be gay, but a
no.
struggle to feel comfortable in his own body in a relationship period, just from
Well,
trauma.
and not understanding, like, do you remember we talked about that? Did we ever do the baby deer? Or am I just like forgetting about the baby deer episodes? Baby reindeer, baby
Maybe
deer.
what is it called?
But it was that stalking
The
case.
stalker. We haven't done it yet. I
So
have it though.
he talks about how his sexuality, and I'm not saying this is for everybody. Okay, hear me
No.
really clearly. This is not geared towards
Baby
everybody.
reindeer, not yeah, baby deer,
Baby
baby
reindeer.
reindeer. Yeah, yeah.
But he even talks about how he was confused with his sexuality because he was also abused by a man.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying, again,
Mm-mm.
please hear me. I am not saying that's everybody.
Mm-mm.
However, there is a big correlation that if you are sexually abused
Yes.
by the same gendered adult,
Right.
it could potentially impact your way of thinking about yourself, your sexuality, your body, all of that.
Well, and then the other thing that we see, just sexuality in general, doesn't matter if you're same sex attracted, doesn't matter.
Mhm.
End up with a really weird relationship with sex too. So some people become hypersexualized and some people
Yes, exactly.
shut down and can't connect to anyone, which
Exactly.
both are understandable.
Both are understandable.
Yeah.
Confusion around your own sexuality, it's all understandable.
Oh, yeah,
All of it.
absolutely.
Again, it doesn't mean that you have to go through that in order to identify, other than heterosexuals, right?
Well, trauma is not the etiology of
No,
same-sex attraction. It just is
correct.
factor sometimes.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
Yes, I got you, boo.
So, Erik was abused until they killed their parents.
Mm.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do they get into who killed who when? Because I have theories. Like the order in which they were killed and who shot who.
Mm-mm.
Lyle killed dad.
I'm
One
pretty sure you're right.
1000%. If I had to just put my
I think Lyle shot both. They were all like relatively lethal shots, but I think Lyle shot both lethal shots.
Oh, yeah. No, no, no. Lyle went in there and killed his dad.
Yes.
I just believe that 100%. I don't think it was Erik.
Yeah.
Erik may have done a little bit of the overkill. I can't promise that didn't happen. But Lyle strikes me as the one who went in there and just took care of business.
I think you're right. And I think he killed because he went back in to finish his mom off.
Lyle did?
Yeah.
Yep, that makes all kinds of sense.
Because mom didn't die right away. Dad did. I mean, dad was like his brain was blown out.
Well, he got obliterated, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, y'all. It's graphic.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, he was abused until they killed their parents. Erik was. He was asked what was the cause of them killing their parents, and he said, "It was me telling Lyle that their dad had been molesting him still. I think one of their final straws was when Erik wanted to go to Stanford,
Mm.
and his dad told him that he had to go to UCLA and live at home still. So Eric's like getaway was going to be college.
Mm.
Got into Stanford and was like going to go. And his dad was like, no, you're going to live at home and go to UCLA. Erik knew
Mm.
right then that the abuse was going to continue.
Well, and Lyle, when he found that out,
Yep. Oh, he was
was
pissed.
pissed because
Pissed.
Lyle, even though he had been abused,
Mhm.
stopped when he had the wherewithal to stop. When he understood a little bit more, he got a little bit older and figured out this isn't okay, he
Mhm.
stopped.
Mhm.
So the fact that that continued, the guilt and everything, Lyle was a lit match.
Yep. Because Lyle, I don't think knew that the abuse was still happening to Erik until this moment.
No. What was the timeline? You may not know this, but what was the timeline between Lyle finding out that his dad was still abusing Erik and the murders? I'm going to guess short.
Short. It was short. I don't know the exact timeline, but it
Like an
like
hour, 15 minutes.
yeah,
No.
felt that way in the show, but I think it was like days, maybe like a week or two.
Yeah, but not long.
Not long.
Nope.
And this is the hard part. So Erik said he was when this would happen, his dad was kind and he loved him.
This is the confusing thing about sexual abuse from a caregiver.
Yes. So Erik literally said he showed kindness and that he loved me.
Oh, this is the complicated relationship. You and
Mhm.
I both done trauma work with folks who've been sexually abused by caregivers or siblings or
Mhm.
uncles or whoever, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And the bottom line is it is a very complicated relationship
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
many reasons,
Yep.
but that's one of them. Sometimes that's the only love a vulnerable child gets, and it's complicated.
So I'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
The dad said, Jose said this would stop if he told anyone, if Erik told anyone. And then Erik said, I did not want it to stop because that was the only alone time he
Mm.
got with him. And that was the only time he was kind and caring,
So literally the only love he got.
literally.
Oh.
So there's all this. So that's why I'm saying, like, I think that's why they painted this like big picture of Erik being, um, you know, gay or whatever. But this is part of why he
Mm.
probably struggled is because the only love he really felt was when his dad was abusing him.
Mm.
Like, how confusing is that?
It's so confusing and so wrong.
I know.
Mm.
He did state that he did start to say no. When he would say no, his father would leave and come back with a knife. Yeah, your face. Yep.
Mm.
He said he would put the knife to his neck and threaten to kill him.
Oh my gosh.
Hmm. Also, yeah, I won't get into all the details. Let's just say,
He was forced with the risk of being killed, basically.
yeah, yes, that, and that was like, if he would say no.
Mm.
And his dad would do other things to him, use different things.
Mm.
It's just horrible. It's horrible.
This is my I'm gonna call the police or handle it myself face.
No, I get it. I
I'm
get it.
so mad.
No, I get it.
Oh.
I wish I could tell you the details. Just now that you know, now that we're going over this, go watch all the things.
Well, and we'll talk about it tomorrow, but I don't know that I want to know all of it. It just sounds horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I had already named some of the stuff, obviously, that he did with Lyle. That times 10 is what happened to Erik.
Oh, I believe that.
Okay. So we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Night of the killing. Okay.
Okay.
Erik finally told Lyle what was going on after his father said he was not going away for school and that he had to stay home. Lyle then confronted their father in that moment and told him he would never touch his little brother again.
Okay.
Lyle's big pissed.
Oh, yes. That's why I'm telling you. Lyle walked right up to his dad and like shot him in the face. I
Literally.
don't know what exactly happened, okay?
Literally.
But in my head, it's like absolutely not. This ends today or tomorrow. I'm gonna
Mhm.
shoot you in the face.
Mhm.
That's what happened.
Yeah, he said his father said, "You listen to me. What I do with my son is none of your business, and we will forget this conversation ever took place."
Okay. So dad still thinks he's in charge.
Oh,
That's
dad is like, F
that's
right off,
cute.
bro.
That's cute.
Right. That's cute,
He
bro.
thinks he's still in charge. He's got a couple of grown men that are not.
Literally. Yeah, pissed grown
But
men.
okay, Dad, go on about how you're in
Yeah.
charge.
That's why you
Okay,
got a shotgun to the face anyway.
it is. I
This
know.
is the fire part of me.
I know.
Oh, I get so angry.
I get you.
There was another conversation in that moment with Kitty. God, Kitty, I hate her.
Oh yeah, Kitty's a
Hating, what
problem.
do you oh, this is what Kitty said. You're gonna be so mad, Janine.
I know. I know.
Kitty said, "What do you think? I'm stupid?" She knew about the abuse the whole time and never protected her sons.
So Lyle confronted Kitty, and that's what Kitty said.
Kitty was standing there when Lyle confronted their dad.
Oh no.
Kitty said, "What do you think? I'm stupid?"
Oh, come on. Well, yes, actually.
Yeah, you're an
Also,
idiot.
that's irrelevant. Like
Yeah.
you understand it because it's in plain sight. You are also an idiot.
Yes. And they felt at this point because now the boys are fighting back.
Hmm.
The boys said they believe their parents were capable of killing them at this point.
Because now this thing that they've fought so hard to
To keep
protect
under
and
wraps.
keep a
Yep.
secret, there's a risk it could come out. I bet they were afraid.
Yep. Yep. Erik was told to go to his room and that Jose would be in there shortly.
Okay, I'm sorry. First of all, you're going to send your 18-year-old son that you're actively abusing to his room and
Yeah.
say that you'll be up shortly when you have a history of abusing them?
Yeah.
Like, did his life flash before his eyes? Because it should have.
Yep. Well, so that's the thing. So it's insane. So Jose tells Erik to go to his room because he's about to abuse Erik again. Because that's the only sense of control that he ever has over Erik,
Right. Totally.
right? So again, this is the night of the killing. So the boys had already done their whole shopping spree of guns and I think I went over that in part 1, right?
Yes.
Yeah. How they
Yes.
went and bought guns and used
They
a
have
fake.
got so Lyle found out a week or so before this
Yeah,
day.
week, maybe couple weeks.
Week, maybe couple weeks.
But this is literally the night
Between
of the
that and this, they get the guns and everything. And did they plan to kill them?
yes.
Okay, so they plan to kill him. So Lyle
Well,
confronts
yes,
them.
and they weren't like totally sold, but they also felt like their parents wanted to kill them.
Oh, okay. But this is the first confrontation, though, where
Yes,
Lyle is saying, I know.
yes.
So they were planning probably to kill their parents anyway.
Mhm,
And then they told them what was going on, and they did exactly what the boys probably figured they would do. And then,
mhm. Yeah, because when Erik told Lyle, that was when All this stuff came back. And so when Erik told Lyle, that was like weeks before they had killed them. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yes.
And then Erik addressed it.
Well, and
Or I mean, Lyle.
that's what I'm saying is I think they got these guns and everything else. I don't think they thought they were going to be killed until Lyle confronted, but they had planned on it because
Yeah.
otherwise the parents didn't know that Lyle knew.
Yeah. No, I do think Lyle also addressed it before. If
Okay,
my,
so Lyle had brought it up before. So he was
yeah,
confronting them again?
yes,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure.
Mm.
So they loaded their guns and went down and met them in their study and started shooting.
I mean, well, here's the thing that's interesting. For dad to think he had enough power in that moment, that was the ultimate power move to be like, son, go up to your room, right? To the audacity in so many ways to think that both of the boys would fall in line with that.
So here's where it gets a little dicey.
Mm-hmm.
The parents were in their own study watching TV. So the fight had happened earlier.
Mm-hmm. So the boys like regroup.
Yeah,
Did dad abuse Erik that day?
I do not think so.
Probably not.
I do not think so.
Okay. So then the boys do whatever. They regroup and come in with guns and just start shooting.
Mhm. They were shot 15 times. They
Okay.
shot them 15.
Mm.
Mhm. With shotguns. Let me remind everybody.
15 total shots per person or total? Okay. Did
That's a lot for two people.
did what's his bucket get like 14 of them or 13 of them? 'Cause-
No, Kitty for sure got two or three because Kitty, I believe her like yeah, I believe she was shot maybe three. I
but
could be like,
Kitty didn't die right away.
mm-mm.
Dad died right away.
Yeah, Dad, I think's first shot was like to his face.
Well, I believe that.
Yeah,
And I believe it was Lyle, even though I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it was.
I believe that.
Are you Googling it?
Of course. Who
Clarifying.
who shot first? Oh, there's so much stuff out here.
I know.
I just want to know because you know the boys said at some point, I'm sure they said what the steps were because that's the stuff that they have to kind of disclose.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone's as morbid as us and wants to know, but like from a forensic perspective, I am curious because of their
Yeah.
relationship with each other. Oh man. I'm not seeing who shot first.
Yeah.
I'm seeing 14 shots. One at point blank range, aimed at the back of his head.
Yep.
As Kitty attempted to crawl away, Lyle shot her in the face with a shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
She was shot 9 times of the
Oh, okay.
15.
Well, there you go.
Dad was shot 6 times, but one was to the back of his head, and that was
The lethal.
it's Lyle.
It's Lyle.
I just believe it's Lyle. I'm
I
not
think
saying
it's
Erik
Lyle.
didn't also fire his weapon, but
Yeah, they both fired, but I think it was Lyle.
yep.
This was a huge speculation in the public. People mocked them all of the time and did not take their abuse seriously. Oh, this is going to piss you right off because boys and men did not come out with their stories of abuse at that time. So the belief
Mm-mm.
was that boys did not get abused sexually.
Right.
So remember, this is in the early 90s. If this was if they were two sisters, this would be a different, you and I would be having a different conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you and I know I work with female offenders. You have also,
Mm.
the more we work with men too, men are becoming a little bit more comfortable talking about these things, and it's closing the gap
Yep.
actually
Yep.
between men and women. It's not the same,
Uh,
but the gap is closing.
yep.
Lots of men and young boys are victims of violence as well,
Well, and
and
a lot of
sexual
their
violence.
violence comes from their childhood, and then they end up repeating some of that. Like
Absolutely,
I
yeah.
said early, some of their abuse will show up differently when they become the abuser.
Mm,
Um, but you and I've worked with I mean, I would say over 50% of the men we've worked with
Mm.
in the TV program have been
Yes.
abused,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And then they end up repeating some of those patterns. It might look different, like I said, but they repeat those types of things.
Mm.
So, yeah, so this was a huge thing because again, the belief is that boys don't get abused sexually by men. That's just not a thing.
Well, yeah, and this is the kind of man back then when we had stereotypes.
Hmm.
He was not a stereotypical quote unquote gay man,
Hmm.
right? And now we know people are all different kinds of ways, and there's no one way people show up. But
Hmm.
back in the day, they probably looked at dad and they're like, yeah, this isn't a gay man, so this must not have happened. And no,
Correct.
what father would sexually abuse their sons? It just broke people's brains, probably.
Correct. The prosecution was ruthless about the abuse,
Mm.
talking about how abused people don't kill their parents.
Okay.
It's a big statement.
That's a big statement. Yeah, it's not an accurate statement.
Yeah. So the boys were trying to plead for imperfect self-defense. So what imperfect self-defense means is that in that moment they weren't necessarily in danger,
Hmm.
but they did feel like they were in danger.
Like big picture, their lives were in danger.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so some of the notions that the prosecution played and also like media was you could have left, which you and I both know. You tell a victim of abuse you could have left, especially any
Oh,
victim, but children, where are they gonna I mean, no. You could have left, you could have run away. It's insane.
no. No, this was psychological,
Yep.
physical warfare. This is how
Yep.
people are tortured.
Yep.
So they didn't believe, even if they had access to all the money, you might think, well, Lyle was out on his own and he had
Yep.
access to money and everything else. Mm-mm.
They didn't. They didn't. Everything was controlled by dad.
Well, and that psychological warfare of
Hmm.
you deserve this. This is how I show love to you. I mean, it's so complicated. You can't walk away from something like that easily. You really can't.
No.
And also, and you and I, we haven't actually said this on the podcast, I don't think yet, but we both do pretty extensive trauma work.
Hmm.
And little kids cannot
Mm.
externalize anything that happens to them. They don't have the context of an adult. So it's easy to look at these situations and go, well, they should have just told somebody or whatever. Little kids always internalize. They're little baby narcissists. That's what we want. That's a healthy child. A healthy
Hmm.
child is looking at themselves. But the shadow side of that is when children are abused, they think it's their fault. They think it's something about them.
Yep. Yep.
And when your mom knows and does nothing, then you really think this is just normal and it is what it is.
Well, yeah, and at some point you start to realize this is like, I mean, the reason why I think they killed Kitty too is because she didn't protect them at all, and she knew this whole time.
Mm-mm. Oh,
You
absolutely.
eventually start to know this is not good.
Mm-mm.
Like, mom's in the know.
Mm.
What safety do I have now? There's no safety, even as the older boys,
Mm.
right? Lyle could get away because Lyle was actually liked by dad, right? But Erik was screwed. I mean, he like dad was saying he had to stay there as an 18-year-old man, or young adult. It's like Erik genuinely did not feel like he had a way out. And that was the other thing is dad controlled all the finances. So what are they going to do?
That's
They don't
right.
do anything different. And here's the thing. Well, what people probably say is like, well, they were rich, whatever. They could have gotten a job. That's not how they were raised.
Mm-mm.
They
No.
weren't raised to go get a job. When Lyle got suspended, he went and worked for his dad. His dad wasn't going to let him go work somewhere else.
Yeah, the control would have been really thick,
Yep,
partly to protect the secrecy
exactly.
and to control the finances.
And to
Absolutely.
control that, right?
Control
Like
them. Yeah.
he needed ultimate control of his family forever,
Mm.
forever. And here's the thing, God forbid those boys had their own sons.
Mm.
What do you think would have happened to them?
Oh, well, at age 6, we know exactly what would have happened to them.
Exactly.
Mm.
And what are the boys gonna do? They've already been trained, we don't talk. They've already been trained, we don't protect. Our own family doesn't protect. So we just
So
this is
then
this is how it is.
the self-defense piece starts to make more sense.
The imperfect quote, right? Yep.
Imperfect self-defense starts to make more sense.
Yep. So where do you think this left the jury? Okay, so like defense had a good case, prosecution was at their throats. Sorry for the, no pun intended, but where do you think that this left the jury?
I'm gonna guess like a hung jury, like a
It
deadlock
was.
jury. Yeah,
It was jury.
because it would need to be unanimous
Yep.
for a guilty verdict,
Yep.
and I'm guessing this created enough doubt
Yep.
that they couldn't be unanimous.
Yep. Well, and what's really interesting is most of the men in this case wanted to convict them for with the death penalty, and the women were the empathetic ones.
Well, when you look at the abuse rate, even
Mhm.
though that gap is closing, there's still a gap.
Yep.
Statistically speaking, I don't know how many women were on the jury, but at least one or two of them have been
Yep.
victims of sexual abuse, and they may or may not have been honest about that going in
Yep.
because we don't talk about those things, you know?
Well, and men, like we said, early 90s, men were like,
It
this
doesn't
doesn't happen.
happen. We're not buying it.
So even if the women didn't go through that, because women are more prone to getting abused that way,
Yeah.
they're gonna have more empathy.
They're going to have more empathy because they're going to understand it and all the complicated emotions.
Yeah, I don't know the full story, and I'm like, bye bye, parents. Like
Yeah, I
it
know.
sounds bad, but I'm like, I don't know the quote unquote truth because it's alleged
Right.
against parents. They couldn't defend themselves, but there's enough
No.
against them for it to be hung.
Well, and also, it's not an excuse. So, them murdering their parents at the end of the day is not the right choice, right?
Correct.
We're not endorsing murder on our
No.
podcast. However, there was an element of protecting themselves. And I think
Yeah,
that's why people are going, they've spent all these years. Have they served their time? Is this
right.
more of a manslaughtery type case than a
Exactly.
first degree premeditated murder for no reason kind of case?
And here's the thing, like at the end of the day, they know what they did was the most wrong thing that they could have done,
Hmm.
you know? And I agree, like obviously don't kill your parents. There are other ways. And like you have to think, if I'm thinking if half of this happened,
Yeah.
they like you don't know what's going on in their brain. Like
Mhm.
thankfully will never know
Mm.
how they were thinking, and they genuinely thought that that was their way out.
Yeah.
Just like when people commit suicide, they genuinely think that that is the only way out.
Well, and I think for Lyle specifically, I'm wondering if he felt like that was the only way to protect Erik because
Ex
Erik could not protect himself.
exactly.
And so Lyle's like, fine, if you can't protect yourself and dad
Yep,
is a predator who won't stop, then
yep,
I'm gonna stop him.
yep, exactly. Lyle was pissed.
Oh, yeah.
So, after the first case, this is how they ended up in prison for this long. Some recordings came out
Hmm.
of Lyle, or I'm sorry, came out, yeah, about Lyle by this woman who he had talked to on the phone a bunch during the first case.
Okay.
Her name was Norma Novell,
Okay.
and he showed the side to himself that was more like his father.
Hmm.
So this bit him in the butt. What I will really quickly say, if you watch all the things, the show portrays this as a bigger thing than it was.
Okay.
Um, I think there's obviously truth to what the show says, but I don't think he was as incriminating as the show makes him out to be. I could be wrong.
So what did he do?
Okay. He was more confident of him and sure of himself and how he could impact people.
Hmm.
Okay. He said he wanted to do a book with this woman about the whole case.
Oh, what is wrong with these people in prison wanting to write books, make
I know.
movies? Oh,
What he didn't know is that recorded everything he said, and he didn't agree with him being recorded.
mm-mm,
He talked about how he can affect people in a positive way and a negative way.
mm.
So, like I said, I will say the TV series portrays Lyle as a big jackwagon.
Yeah.
And the recordings I have heard, they don't demonstrate him that intensely. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But this did impact their case. So he said he did admit that he would be willing to lie to help his case when he felt like it was needed to count damaging testimony from the original psychologist.
Hmm.
And then he also said lying was easy for him.
Hmm.
So, like, he gave her enough,
And a little grandiose, like,
very
I'm a
grandiose.
baddie, I can manipulate people, I can whatever.
Well, and so when he gave his testimony on the stand and was like a bawling mess,
Mm.
this is what I think about it, and I could be giving him way too much credit, okay?
Yeah.
I do think Lyle is a little sociopathic. I do think that.
He got more of the antisocial
He did.
from dad.
He
Yeah.
did.
Hmm.
I think he was genuine when he was crying because there's no way you can fake those type of tears and then also Eric's tears.
Mm.
But what happened was then he then went and told this woman basically like I had them like basically in the palm of my hand. He didn't say that exactly. But he then went and like used that as a grandiose way to like brag about himself. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
So I think both are true. I
Yeah.
think he was being truthful during his testimony, and then I also think he went and wanted to make himself look really good and brag about himself. And
Yeah.
that he like gave this epic thing and had everyone eating out of the palm of his hand.
Well, and he may have laid it on thick that day too. Like he
Maybe.
may have felt genuine remorse, but then also milked it. Like people are
Sure.
complicated. It's rarely one or the other.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's true. Um, but the tapes were not admitted into the trial,
Hmm.
but
The,
people still know
the
about it.
first trial or second trial,
Either one.
either one. Okay. But people knew about it. It got out.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Also, the mistrial happened in January of 94.
Oh,
Do you-
Jay.
Yes.
Oh.
He was arrested in June of 94. This really impacted the Menendez case. So OJ took over the media. So the media went from Menendez to OJ, and the brothers were basically forgotten about. Erik ended up in prison with OJ, and then Lyle was like on a
Oh,
different floor.
yeah.
Yes.
Because they're in the same geographical area. Oh my gosh.
Yep. Then they found OJ not guilty. So this is all still before second trial for the Menendez.
This is wild.
So they find OJ not guilty. Yes, and I believe that this really negatively impacted the Menendez boys, and that a lot of like some of the documentaries say that too. Because in OJ's case,
Mm-hmm.
there was no justice
Right.
for the victims.
Right.
Okay.
And there were racial connotations to the whole thing.
Well, that backdates to the
Rodney
first
King.
right exactly Rodney
Yep.
King's case. So all three of these cases are very intertwined, it's rough.
Yeah. Mm. And
Yes.
both involve the LAPD, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
The LAPD was not people's favorite.
Mm-mm. No, and they shouldn't have been.
No, absolutely not.
Firm in the Berman.
Oh my God, he was the worst.
I know.
So people said that this will be payback. 8 days after OJ was found not guilty, their second trial started. This makes me so mad. There were different approaches by the prosecution and by the judge. So the judge was embarrassed, quote unquote,
Hmm.
um, about the first trial, that it was a hung jury. So the judge said they are not women. So the battered women's syndrome does not apply. So all the trauma is not relevant and will not be brought into the courtroom.
So in the second trial, the jury wasn't allowed to consider the victimization. I mean, they knew about it probably from news and stuff, but they're supposed to not consider that
Correct.
in their deliberations.
Correct. So
Oh, geez.
this was a totally different trial. That was their only defense, was what they experienced.
Well, yeah, because we had confessions.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
The public did not hear from Lyle again because of those tapes.
Mm,
So they didn't use them, but they also didn't put Lyle on the stand.
mm,
And they only put Erik on. The teachers, coaches, family, and friends were not asked to testify again.
mm.
So everyone who were witnesses, character witnesses to the boys, the
Yeah.
cousin who talked about the abuse, none of them were able to testify again. So basically, all of the abuse was kept out of the second trial.
Hmm.
Again, this was the main reason for the defense, and they weren't allowed to bring that in. So obviously, it was a unanimous, I shouldn't say obviously, but kind of obviously, it was a unanimous conviction, life in prison without the option of parole.
Mm,
It was guaranteed a murder verdict rather than a manslaughter.
mm.
However, they didn't want to put them to death because I think they did know about the abuse.
Yeah.
So there was one man on the jury who did talk about that. They said,
Mm,
you have to take, like, there's no human who cannot take that into consideration. And that if those things did happen, they didn't want to give them the death penalty.
mm. So it was taken into account in sentencing a little bit. Like they didn't
Yeah.
get death penalty because of that.
Yeah. Because people knew about the abuse. So that brings us to the end of this part. I do believe we'll do either a part 3 or a mini on what's happening now.
Mm,
I will say at the very end, they were not brought to the same prison for many, many years. They recently just allowed the boys, men, brothers, to be, so they relocated, I believe, Lyle to where Erik was or is in prison. So
so
they are
they
now,
probably had like I don't know if you can write letters from prison to prison.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I
So
do think they stayed in some touch, but I think you can like call. I don't know.
I don't know. Oh,
But the biggest thing for them is they've been model citizens in prison, both of them.
yeah.
They've started like men's groups. They both graduated college. Erik got married and has a stepdaughter.
Well, and they
Um,
have no motivation to do that, right? Like their life in prison without the possibility of parole. So they're not trying to look good for a parole board by
right.
doing those things. They're just
They're just
doing
trying
those
to
things.
live a better life
Mm-hmm.
and make the best of what they have.
Mm.
So we're gonna get into, because we're probably what, at like 2-ish hours.
Oh, yeah.
I think what we should do is get into in our next one how all this brought back up, because that's the crazy part of this. So
Really?
quick teaser, there's a few different things, but part of it that I do know a little more about, and I've got to do a little more research about around some other stuff. But because of the millennial generation and Gen Z generation blowing some of these things up. So a lot of our generation and Gen Z are going back and like listening to like old cases
Oh, yeah.
and getting big mad about some of it.
100%.
So
Yeah.
Gypsy Rose kills her mom, well, basically gets her boyfriend who has autism and a IQ of like very low
Yeah.
to kill her mom.
Yeah.
And she gets like what, 6 years?
Oh yeah.
I
If
don't even
that,
know if she served the whole time, but that was what she was given, and then I'm pretty sure she didn't serve that whole time.
because they took into account her trauma.
Yes. So that's why. So the two generations, our generation and Gen Z, are started to like make all these, like thank goodness to social media and TikTok,
Oh my gosh.
started to bring all this stuff back into light. And they're like looking at a bunch of different cases.
Mm,
That was part of, let me make that really clear, why some of these cases are getting brought back up, including the Menendez brothers.
that's just nuts.
I know.
Well, Nat, you did your homework, friend.
Girl, I told you this is why it takes me so long to plan
You
cases.
also have changed my mind because I came in with a pretty strong,
Hmm.
not knowing much, in fairness,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I came in with a pretty strong feeling like not an excuse for murder. And I still feel that. However, boy, I get it.
Mhm.
I get it.
So here's the thing. Don't murder your parents.
Yeah, yeah, we're not endorsing murder on here. We're
Do not
literally
murder anybody if you're getting,
anti-crime, right?
yes, if you're getting abused, there thankfully are more resources now than there were in the early 90s.
Oh, yeah.
There's less shame, and I am not endorsing murder. And
Yeah.
I am on the side of these men deserve another shot.
Well, I think that they probably deserve, especially given how they serve their time,
Yes.
an opportunity to breathe clean air again, even if they are closely monitored, right?
Yes,
Even
absolutely.
if they're
And they
on
should
parole
be.
forever. But
Parole, ankle monitor, like
yes.
whatever. And here's what I genuinely think.
Hmm.
I do think they would be fine with that.
Yeah.
I don't think they want to get out and live
Mm.
a reckless life. I don't think that's what
Mm-mm.
they would intend. And here's the thing, like I said before, I do think Lyle out of the two boys got more of the antisocial traits from dad, but even Lyle has led a really pro-social life in prison.
Yeah.
And you and I both know we
Yeah.
can work with antisocial humans and they can be productive members of society.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So, so I changed your mind.
Well, yeah, you definitely made me think. And yeah, I'm really curious to see what happens now
Yep.
this month with some of what's going on. So I can't wait for you to get into that too.
I know. Well, yeah, so we're gonna do a little bit more of a deep dive of obviously, like I said, why this got brought back up and
Yes.
why it's getting looked at again. And then also, yeah, I believe their trial's supposed to happen this month. So that's the hope.
And if this episode's triggering,
Yeah.
if you have a history of this, take care of yourself, take a deep breath, talk to your therapist about it, get help if you haven't already.
Yes.
This happens unfortunately to a lot of people. But
Hmm.
I could understand Lyle. I could understand it.
I understand both of them.
I do. I really understand Erik. I just think the protectiveness
Of
mixed with
Lyle.
the antisocial,
Hmm.
clinically and on a personal level, it makes sense.
Yes.
Not excusing it, but it makes
Nope.
sense,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
And I'm guessing that's one of the last thoughts that Dad had was, oh shit,
No kidding.
he's me in some
Yeah.
ways, right? Like I have built this human
Yep.
and he's gonna end me. And that's what happened.
And that's what happened. They both
Mhm.
did. And that's the thing. Like, again, not excusing it.
No,
And humans can only take so much, especially from the people who are supposed to love them the most.
absolutely.
Right?
Everybody
Again,
has a
not
limit.
saying not saying it's okay. And
Mm-mm, not okay.
I'm thankful I will never understand what they felt.
Well, the really heartbreaking thing is they lost their whole life too. So it's like the parents lost their lives and so did the boys. Like they
Yep.
lost their lives too. So it's not a solution. This is not a solution, but clinically understandable and on a personal level, I do understand it now and I didn't think that I would,
Mhm. I
you know.
know. Their case is hard. I remember when I first heard about the Menendez boys, and this was like a couple years ago or like a year ago.
Yeah.
I watched a different, like another documentary on them, and
Mm,
it didn't really go as far deep into the abuse, or the trial. It just really talked about these boys and whatever, and I didn't give it much thought.
mm,
And so if I didn't watch all the things, if I didn't do the research, I probably would sit in that same spot of like, like
mm,
I'm, you guys didn't get the death penalty because of what you endured, and that's good enough. But
mm.
I kind of hang in the camp that we can give them another little bit of a shot.
Well, yeah, and I mean the Slender Man chicks got let out of prison, and that's freaking terrifying.
Yep.
And we had a mental health case there, so it's
Yep.
hard to. I realize their victim didn't die, but might as well have in terms of the injuries.
Yeah.
And it's horrific. And they were young too, a little bit younger, but still young.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Hmm.
I'm gonna noodle on this. I'm gonna noodle on this for our mini on the update of what's happening.
Perfect.
But thank you so much, Nat. And you guys take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next week. As always,
Bye, forensic friends.
I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.